everyone.
Hello, everybody.
We are back with episode 12.
Yes, and today we're going to look at Yoshimura Hiroshi's album,
Yes.
Green.
Yes, Hiroshi Yoshimura's album Green, which was released in 1986 originally. But
Yes.
there is a 2017 reissue. We'll talk about that too. But here we are. After talking so much about Japan, we just, have to do
We just had to go back again, didn't we?
to Japan, and for a whole episode, we need to dedicate a whole episode to one of these amazing composers from Japan.
Yes. And a pioneer of a particular music style, Kankyo Ongaku.
Okay, that's environmental music, right?
Environmental music, yes. And so it was music in relation to the environment, music that he used was using field recordings, environmental field recordings, and also part of the environmental movement. And ongaku, so that's kankyo, means environment, and ongaku just means music.
So you're always taking us through these Japanese words, which I appreciate a lot.
Well, ongaku the word for music is a really nice one, because on just means sound,
Okay.
and gaku means play. It can also mean like
It's like gagaku also has gaku, right?
Yes. So it's play in the sense of like kids play, but you also have a Shakespeare play. It means
Oh wow,
kind of,
that's such a beautiful language.
oh yeah, but also really interesting. Something I find really interesting from my background is that the character for gaku, which is also tanoshi, which is also fun, is very similar, other than a few little strokes, is very, very similar to the character for medicine.
Oh, wow.
So that it has a kind of nogaku, gagaku, ongaku. It has this sense of it's a healing process as well as a kind of creative.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we have got this environmental healing music.
Yes.
And then, this term, which I have mixed feelings about, New Age, but in Japan, that's the kind of music that is labeled under New Age, Japanese New Age, is actually not very different from ambient music. Brian, introduced when he coined the term. Of course, there was ambient music or furniture music before that. But my point is, it's different from what you would see as New Age on Spotify, maybe. Or there is some aspect of it that is connected to nature sounds and ambience.
Yeah, it's much less. It doesn't have the sort of cod spirituality of New Age music, does it? It's much more in respect of nature. I mean, I've loved the cover of this album with two leaves from a Christmas cactus.
Very beautiful Christmas cactus.
Really, really beautiful plant.
Yeah.
And the whole thing itself, the music, the whole album, is a very beautiful thing, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, I can't pick my favorite, but definitely I keep looping Creek. The whole album is very beautifully produced and created, and also a great example for this type of music. Although the reissue adds extra water sounds, which the composer does not record, and I'm not sure if it is an okay thing to do without his consent. What do you think about that? That's what they did,
Well, there is a weird thing in that there was inclusion of environmental sound was part of that whole style.
Yes.
Although the original version of the album doesn't have those.
No.
But that was something that he did do.
He did do these field recordings, and he did also. There is another album that was released before this. It's called Surround. And it has got the same approach, but this one is even like taking it to the next level. So it sounds good. That it's the sounds of the water and everything. It sounds good. Also, there is this Japanese type of, what was it? Water droplet sounds. There's a term for that too.
Oh, I don't know.
I'm not sure if I can remember it now, but anyway, it's just this country is full of very beautiful things, and this is just one of those things. And when it was first released, or when these composers were pioneering this type of a thing, they never ever got the recognition, the international recognition that they have got now. It's after 35 or 40 years, suddenly this type of Japanese new age music, especially this album, Green, draws the attention of all sorts of circles, not only people who listen to ambient music, but, maybe the yoga people, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was something I picked up on the Wikipedia page for Yoshimura.
Yeah, please share that.
Was in 2017, Yoshimura, as well as other ambient Japanese musicians, received a resurgence due to changes to the YouTube algorithm.
So the million views happened after that. Is that
exactly? That's when that started. So that brought all that back into focus.
Okay,
again.
Is that why we have got all these hipsters commenting now?
Yeah.
I'm just joking, obviously, but it's very good that it gets this recognition now. But this is not the only Japanese composer who gets this, well-deserved recognition posthumously. Maybe that's the same thing that happened to Susumu Yokota's Sakura album. Because that also got a lot of views. And these are all connected. Maybe the algorithm also connects them. So because there is this nature focus, but also the very calming Japanese.
There's also an approach to melody and harmony.
Yes.
I mean, it sounds... It can sound twee. I mean, it can sound... the use of pentatonic scales, very, very simple harmony,
very much.
Can sound so simplistic.
Also minimalism.
Yes, yeah. Well, minimalist. I mean, what's with the second track? Is it the second or the first track?
Is it the Creek track that we were talking about?
Yeah. Well, there's a track called Feel, the second track, which is it really almost feels like if you set your students a task of study Terry Riley, find out what his techniques were. It really does almost sound like a study in Rileyisms. And it's interesting, weirdly enough, that Terry Riley now lives in Japan.
Yes!
Yeah.
Right.
A number of my Japanese friends have got to hang out with Terry these days because he moved there. He was there to do some gigs or to do a residency when COVID happened.
Yeah.
And so he stayed there for 2 years. He's still got his ranch just outside San Francisco.
Okay.
So he stayed there for 2 years till the pandemic calmed down, and just liked it so much he stayed.
No wonder.
Yeah, and but there is a link between Riley's sense of of course Indian and Buddhist sacred music was a big important part with him, and that has a massive relationship with Japanese culture. So there is a link there, and he's obviously just really, really comfortable. So there's
very good.
Funny
but will you become that composer too, who ended up moving Japan in the end? Because you are very much connected with Japan.
I am, yes.
I mean, I don't know when I visited, but
we'll get you there. We'll definitely do one of these podcasts from Tokyo one day, from Shibuya.
Oh yes, I was actually talking about that earlier, and then you did, without knowing about it, you said this. So it is supposed to happen.
There we go.
So and.
It is written.
Another reason is because we are about to talk about the Roland and Yamaha, the X7, all these Japanese tech assets that transformed electronic music, which takes us to MIDI.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the period when these pieces were all written, was really the heyday of, well, I say the heyday. I mean, MIDI is still having a heyday. Basically, MIDI, musical instrument digital interface, is a protocol of control. So one keyboard or one instrument can control the sounds from lots of other machines.
Yeah, it's a universal language.
Yeah.
It lets these devices communicate with each other, talk to each other without going through extra conversions or anything.
Yeah, and it was the Japanese corporations, particularly Yamaha and Roland, that really jumped on it and used it first.
Yeah,
although it was created by an American guy, Dave Smith, who was the designer of Prophet synthesizers.
Yeah, and when he first suggested this idea to American companies, it was not well approached. Like, people were anxious about their gated approach, like they wanted to keep their own communication. However, when he proposed this idea to CEOs of, Roland, Yamaha, I don't know what other Japanese companies. Korg also, then they really liked it, and then it was a NAMM show. In a NAMM show in the 80s.
83, I think it was.
1983, where, they introduced the prototype. And when it worked, it was like a magical moment for Dave Smith, of course. And then today it becomes this important
officially, it's the most successful computer protocol ever written. Because it's never been updated.
The thing is, they are going to introduce a MIDI 2.0.
Well, because it's still MIDI 1.0 from 1983.
Wow! Yes.
But in 2020 there was they did launch MIDI 2.0.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's 3 years ago, and I work in the business all the time. I've never come across a MIDI 2.0 piece of equipment.
No.
It still doesn't really, because MIDI 1.0 it just does everything.
Still a very much universal, stable protocol.
Yeah.
And that's at the center of this album, isn't it?
Yes. And one of the things I really love about this is that you can hear this technology, you can hear the way that it's used. It's funny that from the 90s onwards, music that sequenced music using MIDI is very, very fixed to a rhythmic grid.
Yeah.
Of 16s or smaller divisions. It's very, very rhythmically fixed. But what's really nice about this, a lot of what he does here is full of rubato. It's like every melody he's lengthening some notes and shortening others really expressively.
Actually, that's very much a good point, because when we listen to, for example, which also sounds very good, Berlin School, Glass Shoes or Tangerine Dream, we have got the ambient layers separately, but the sequencing has the faster tempo sequences. Whereas in this album, as you just pointed, things are longer, gradual, very much almost like a laid-back way of exploring the devices, the Yamaha FM synthesizers also.
Yeah. But you can hear a keyboard player's kind of expressive ability in stretching and compressing time with this, which is something you don't really get with contemporary sequenced music using MIDI. I mean, it's almost like you can hear. I mean, it sounds. I don't know. It sounds a bit silly in a way, but you can almost hear like his wrists coming up and down while he's playing the keyboard. It's like he's really playing. His real performance is really in there.
Yeah.
And which is something again that can be captured with MIDI, and you can hear how this performance is being played by other sound sources while he's playing. It's really lovely stuff.
I think it's also because of the soundscape connection, because he did explore field recordings and soundscapes. So there's the aspect of nature, environmental music, obviously. Yeah.
These Japanese composers you hear in Eno's ambient series, which came later. You hear
later, but known before them.
Yes,
Yeah.
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 So there was, there's a definite direct influence there.
Yes.
But talking field recordings, what I thought was quite funny and quite, I don't know, quite emblematic, really, of the difference between life in Japan and life in the West is that one of the tracks on this album is called Street Number
Yes.
7. It's this very, very chilled, very beautiful, very harmonious, lovely little piece of music that sounds like a bit like a Japanese street. It doesn't sound like the street I live on in London.
In South London.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like this.
So if you wanted to make a piece called Streets, that would
Yeah.
definitely not sound like Yoshimura's Street.
Yeah. Street is used in the West, or like in the English, like Anglophone world. There's like a street is like something that's like tough and dangerous, and
Yeah.
or in the martial arts world, people talk about this, you wouldn't do this in the street,
Yeah.
like as if it's like this tough place where the hardest, toughest things happen. Music, hip hop is like street music, man.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
Yoshimura's street, there's this gently
Streets,
drifting, like major key.
Definitely
thing,
wondering, like what he would say
Yes, yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
There is a lot of melodical approach also. It's quite like an electronic music album, and the ambient part would be more of the textures and non-pitch elements. But here, the pitch is also part of the composition, but not like the super central part, but still defining and setting a certain mood.
Yeah. Well, talking that certain mood, that reminds me. What I'm about to tell you is quite possibly an urban myth. I'll have to go back and look this up. But I noticed that Yoshimura was involved with composing melodies for public spaces, for train stations.
Yes, that's
one of the lovely things if you travel around Tokyo, or if you travel anywhere in Japan, but particularly in Tokyo, because the train stations are so close to each other, you notice that the melody played when a train arrives at a Chikatetsu underground station.
All these places I've never been to and hope to.
Every little station has its melody, like a record. So it's a recognizable little 5 or 6 note little tune.
Okay.
And some of them are very stately, some of them are very charming, some of them are little major things. And that's all true, but this is where it gets into urban myth. I was told on a trip to Japan once that the suicide rate at certain stations is higher than at others.
Wow, okay.
The suicide rate in Japan is quite high because of for lots of reasons, but also because of the approach. It's not stigmatized in the same way. And so somebody had the bright idea that it may be related to the musical input, to the melodies that were played at the stations every time a train came in. So they moved the tunes around and set the different tunes to different stations, and the suicide rate followed the music.
What?
Now, as I say, that I was told that by a friend of mine standing at a train station in Tokyo.
Okay.
So I don't know how true that is. It could be an urban myth, but it shows the relationship of music to mental health and the way that music is used in environments in Japan.
So there is this linear note that he added in his album, and the original one. Liner note. It said, the comfortable scenery of the natural cycle is known as green. So there is a cycle, and that cycle also might involve death.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think so, and that's part of nature.
Yeah. I mean, if you have a garden, you're dealing with dead shit all the time.
Do you have one?
I've got some potted plants.
Yeah.
But it is part of it, and also part of Zen Buddhism, or any form of Buddhism, is overcoming the fear of death.
Yeah.
Is a big part of it, you know.
Or radical acceptance.
Yes, yeah.
Accepting it, yeah.
Yeah, which and you know that connects a bit to Eliane Radig and her
Tibetan Book of Death connection.
Yes, Tibetan Buddhism.
Yeah, it's on our episode 3 if anyone is keen to listen to it.
Yes, it's still available. You know, these are quite subtle differences, but they're very much there in Japanese culture in a way that we don't have in the West.
But the West now is reissuing these albums, like all these companies bringing attention to this composer, but it's also commercial success for them. And sadly, not for the composer when he was alive.
Well, no, and he died. He died relatively young, didn't he?
Yeah, due to cancer. Yeah, but just some of the most amazing Japanese composers died of at younger ages.
Well, there's there's 3 things about Japan.
Second World War.
Yeah, 3 things about Japan. One is smokers. There are some heavy smokers in Japan. And tobacco smoking is kind of normalized to a degree that is quite shocking.
Wow, okay.
And that kills a lot of people.
In Turkey also is very common.
And another thing is the sun is very, very intense in Japan. I mean, it's I mean, Tokyo is about the same latitude as Barcelona. So, you know, so there's a lot of very, very bright sunlight. Yeah. So people do suffer from skin cancer. I mean, even when I'm in Japan, even in the winter, I have to worry about putting cream on my skin.
Extra skin.
Yes, but extra layer of skin. And then thirdly, of course, is there's 2 atomic bombs.
Yeah.
And Fukushima. You know, there is
Hiroshima.
There's carcinogenic things in the atmosphere. You know.
Yeah.
And nevertheless, I mean, in general, the lifespan is longer in Japan than it is in the West, but there is a prevalence of people getting cancer.
Yeah. So this composer was a brilliant artist also who mastered the use of the Yamaha synthesizer, which was difficult to program for and work with at the time for this type of settings, and it was also around that time like when John Chowning introduced FM synthesis, and that was patented with Yamaha DX7. So, and to start with, it was not very easy to work with to program.
It's completely unintuitive.
But then here is this composer that not only mastered it but also created a unique approach with it.
Yeah. So, well, I think the one of the other things about a general feeling when you listen to this album is, yes, it's very it's very harmonious. It's all perfectly in tune. Mm-hmm. It's major and minor keys, maybe a bit modal here and there, but there's nothing challenging about the harmony. Mm-hmm. But the
sound
quality,
the texture.
Yeah, exactly, the quality of the sound,
the layers.
Yes,
the sound is. He was a great sound designer.
Yeah. The quality of the recordings, the dynamic range. All those aspects that sometimes get a bit overlooked, but are very much part of the sound engineer's world of compression, dynamic range, clarity, depth of field. All this stuff is beautifully handled all the way through, and this what really sets him apart from. I'm holding up my fingers here, doing that. The inverted commas. New age.
There you go. That's like earlier I was trying to explain what sets him apart. This is what set him apart.
It's just
and
the quality.
Sets him apart from the new age stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people who like it, and I'm totally fine with it. But I think this goes beyond the term Japanese new age. This album.
Yeah.
This is with the reissue. It becomes also a soundscape album, of course. Mm-hmm. The water, calming water sounds that they edit, but I still think it would have been good to get his consent.
Yeah, well,
maybe they did somewhere. I don't know before he died. I don't know, but it's good that it is reaching out to so many people now.
Yeah. I mean, it's also interesting that for us, who've listen to really hardcore noise things, or composers like Xenakis who we were talking about.
Previous episode.
this very direct and very simple diatonic use of harmony can be a bit of a shock, almost like a turn off. It's can almost sound a bit twee.
Yeah.
It reminds me often, Japanese music that uses these very, very simple harmonic relationships and pentatonic melodies. It reminds me of the music for Miyazaki films.
Yes.
And sometimes you see performances of the music for Miyazaki films, and it's a huge orchestra and a piano and all the rest of it. And it's like, they're only playing 3 notes.
Yeah. I know.
But it's still done with that intensity of feeling, it's done with that sincerity.
Definitely.
That makes it really, it comes across, it functions.
Yeah, this album is very compact, but also gives you, whatever message it is trying to convey, it is doing it in a very effective way.
Yeah.
And it is with a limited focus limitations, but also that includes the earlier limitations of Yamaha FM synthesizers.
Mm-hmm. One thing we could say is that this is a keyboard player's album.
It is.
You can hear there's somebody who really knows how to play and knows how to express themselves properly with a keyboard. And MIDI was one of the things that really accelerated music shifting from guitars to keyboards.
Yeah, it made it more accessible because then people don't have to hire and pay session musicians or session artists, and they are able to hear how their music would sound like. Composers, can hear how their music would sound like before they present it to an audience. So it made it possible, and then also possibilities with editing, more user-friendly possibilities for editing. So the MIDI protocol is very much important to mention, and then that would take us to the role of Japanese manufacturers in the whole electronic music development. But
Japanese music companies also produce lots of guitars.
Yes, like Ibanez and Yamaha.
Yeah.
But they also this is not only for then electronic music, then it's pedals. And also the rock music scene is also influenced by things there. But so when I try to look up things about these composers, including Yoshimura and his album Green, it's really difficult to find proper resources in English. So somebody needs to go there and research it in depth with someone who speaks Japanese.
Who do we know?
So who do we know? Like some electronic music researchers and enthusiasts who especially like the music in Japan, they have to go there and research this.
Well, we'll try and find someone.
And they need to give some funding to them.
Yes, they may need some funding.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. This is the episode 11 about Yoshimura.
Yes,
right?
directly into the yen bank account.
We need to really
bank details to follow.
I will tell more about these composers, but here is my IBAN and short code first. But putting the joke aside, I'm so happy that I found out about this music. I don't know how else I would find out about it. And there are so many unearthed gems that we listen to. But this is such a beautiful one from a distant land. But it's also very human, and it is distant, but I feel also very close to it. And then I'm so obsessed with the marimba sounds in the album. Also,
those lovely FM synthesis sounds, and it's also just reading about Yoshimura's life, about how he was involved with music in a really practical sense for
Sound design in a way,
practical settings in society. You know,
Yeah,
like train stations and buildings and and
he was practicing music for airports before it was released.
absolutely, and creating and teaching and creating, a whole generations of people who had the skills to do it. You know, it's a very important person. And when you're in Japan, you hear music all the time when you're in public spaces.
I need to tell my IBAN again and to talk again because you make me want to go to Japan, but I don't have the resources.
I mean, I remember standing not so long ago, standing in Muji, the big chain of shops.
Yeah.
There's a Muji in a shopping mall in Yokohama, and I was standing there and I could hear the music that was in the Muji shop, but I was close enough to the edge of the shop that opened into without doors, opened into the rest of the concourse. I could hear the music from the shop from over the other side, and then the general music for the whole building. So there was 3 lots of music playing concurrently. That I was just standing there waiting for notes to collide and and work together. And these are experiences that you don't really have anywhere else in the world.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah.
So,
yeah, good. See you in Yokohama. Let's go.
Okay, maybe that's why we record one of the episodes. Thank you so much for listening, everybody.
Yes.